Good morning, 106.3. This is Keisha Sloss with House to Home Realtors. Don't forget my website, Credit to Closing. I have a very, very special guest today. So if you are on Section 8 or scattered sites, he specializes in that Section 8 program to help you with the home ownership. All right, Steve Coleman.
Well, thank you, Keisha, for having me this morning.
Yes.
What we wanted to do today was to cover some general information about purchasing a home and some of the common missteps. We're going to talk about those, as well as some of the specialized programs or things which you can do to improve your credit score. We'll talk a little bit about the information that you need to gather and be able to have handy when it's time to purchase a home. And then we'll get a little bit into what it is that our organization has to offer in reference to that.
Yes, he has some really good programs, and they're local.
Very important. Always good to know exactly where Garland Avenue is, as opposed to the other street in the neighborhood. So what I wanted to do today would be to talk a little bit about the common missteps that people have when they get into purchasing a home. In honesty, there's probably about 30 to 40 of them, but we don't have that much time here this morning, so we're only going to talk about 5 of them and then move on. The number one thing that we run into is people that have that have been married and they're no longer together, and so therefore they assume that therefore they're not married, therefore that other individual isn't required to sign on the paperwork. We've had situations where people have recently decided not to be together, and one of the individuals decides they're ready to go and buy a house. Unless you are legally married, you are then responsible, and the other individual is responsible to sign on your paperwork, okay? We've had people that haven't seen each other for 20, 30 years. You have to go find them and get a divorce in order for you to be able to purchase a house, or otherwise they have to sign. So again, it is very important that it is a legal document, and that's kind of what it boils down to. The next thing is student loans. Raise your hand if you've got student loans in the room, and everybody's raising their hand. Okay.
Me as well.
The thing with student loans when it comes to mortgages is just because you're not paying them, because they're deferred, or you're not involved with an actual monthly payback, you're still involved, or they're still calculated in your monthly payment. So there are certain loans that will take your income-based repayment program. So if you've got, say, $20,000 worth of student loan and your monthly payment is zero because of your income, then they will count just as simply zero, okay? But there are other loan programs, and the more popular programs would be the FHA program, whereas regardless of what it is you are paying each month, they're going to count 1%. So that same $20,000 student loan counts as a $200 hit towards your monthly debt-to-income ratio. Okay, so it is important to know what the differences are and what type of loan that you have and what type of payback that you are in. The third thing that I had was not providing 2 years of verifiable employment or schooling. Okay, if you have been in school to learn a trade or to learn a position, to get a degree, to then take a new position, then once you are vetted in that new position, we can count that as your 2 years. You've gone to school for 2 years or even a year and a half, and you've been on your new job for 6 months. That counts as a full 2 years. So you don't have to be on your new job for 2 years in order for it to count, provided that you were in schooling for that job. So that counts towards your 2 years.
Now, Steve, a lot of people, they think like if they go from like being a cashier and then being a nurse, will that still count as the 2 years if it's like continuous?
Okay. Very good question. Now, what she's asking there is if I've changed what type of job that I have, okay? And then in the example that Keisha gave there, if you are a cashier and you're going to school to be a nurse, then we're going to count the time that you were going to school and to become a nurse, Okay. Now, what won't count is if you decide that you are a nurse and then you want to be a holistic healer. Okay. Well, then there's no schooling for that, so therefore we wouldn't be able to count that. So changing the type of job that you have will only work if you're in a situation where you had some kind of training or schooling to get you to that point. Okay. The number two common misstep is deposits. What we look for in this situation is not for you to have any cash deposits on your bank account. We need to be able to document the funds and where the funds came from. So if somebody is in a situation where they're going to help you out and give you money, then you want to take that money. What we commonly tell people is take that money and spend it. But the money that's coming in from your paycheck or from your payroll, you go ahead and have that and put that and let that money build up in your checking account so that that's your money. So when the question becomes, where's your funds? We have the answer to that question and where it came from. Okay. And then the last thing that I have is, I have to have a perfect credit score in order for me to be able to apply. There are certain loan programs out there that will go as low as 580, but typically the 580 credit scores require that you have your own funds. You can't be getting funds from down payment assistance programs or gifts or things of that nature. That has to be your money in your account with your name on it and verify that it is yours. Okay. Typically, the state's program, Kentucky Housing Corporation, kicks in at about the 620 mark. If you get a 620 credit score, then we can utilize their down payment assistance programs. And then, things go better for you, I guess, from a rate standpoint or for a type of loan standpoint as you get to 640, 660, and so on. But we've got a lot of folks sometimes that come to me and say, well, I'm going to wait until my credit score is 700 or even 750, and we don't have to wait that long. With housing, because it's where you lay your head and it's your primary residence, the rules are a little bit more relaxed as opposed to it being an investment property. Now, we're not going to talk about that here today, but if you're trying to get into investment property, that's when you need to have a 700 credit score or higher.
Now, Stephen, I got another question because is it a big, when is it a big difference? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, I got to have an 800 to get the best interest rate. Mm-hmm. Does it really makes a difference? Like if you got a 620 or a 700?
A lot of that depends on what type of loan that you're trying to get. If you're in a situation where you're trying to get a conventional loan, which is one of the more common types of loans, but that one will adjust your interest rate based on what your credit score is. If you're trying to get an FHA loan or a VA loan or any of the portfolio products that even we have at Republic Bank, those loans don't necessarily go by that. They just make sure that you meet a certain criteria, and if you hit that certain criteria, you don't get a better rate because you're higher than that. So therefore, just knowing what type of loan that you're going after is going to affect whether you have to wait until your credit score hits a certain number or not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The next thing that we wanted to talk about were different ways in which we could improve your credit score. If you're in a situation where you're thinking, hey, my credit score is not quite where I want it to be. I know a lot of people use different programs such as Credit Karma and some of the other mycreditreport.com, things of that nature. It is very important to understand that those programs are designed for consumer use and not necessarily utilizing the FICO scores. And so what I mean by that is, when you go to a store, let's say, for example, or you try to get a credit card, the dollar amount that you're borrowing is maybe $500, $1,000, maybe even $2,500. When you go to buy a car, we're typically talking about $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. When we're talking about a house, we're talking about 70, 80, 90, 100,000, $200,000. Okay, so as we go up in the amount of monies that are going to be outstanding, the credit criteria become a little bit more difficult. So what happens with Credit Karma and FreeCreditReport.com? They are looking at what we consider a consumer report. But if we're looking to purchase a home, then we're looking at a little bit more stringent requirements. And typically the gap between the two is about 40 points. So whatever those sites are saying your credit score is, I would subtract about 40 of it, because by the time that with the banks or the mortgage companies run your credit report, that's going to be your number that we're going to be using. Okay. Now, some other things that we could do, to help improve your credit. If you're in a situation where you're trying to get rid of some things, it is always best to get rid of things that affect your credit. You definitely want to sit down with somebody that knows what they're doing, a credit counselor or even a mortgage professional. I know sometimes we get advice from mom and them, and that's not going to work in this situation, especially if they don't own a home, okay? Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to make sure that you are talking to somebody that knows what they're doing before you go on to your grand plan. I know as tax season comes along, people talk about we're going to go ahead and pay off all of our debts. Well, there's certain debts that you definitely want to get rid of. There's some that are okay to go ahead and stay on the credit report, okay? It just depends on what your individual situation is. So it would make sense for you to get with a professional and determine, these are the things that we need to get rid of. Now, with that, the best thing to improve your credit score is to have things on your credit that are hitting on a positive note, things that you're paying for on a monthly basis each and every month. On time. So there's different ways to do that, to include a credit builder programs or even a secured credit card. And getting with a bank or a financial institution that provides those things, and then of course you utilize them. I had one gentleman that got a secured credit card, used it one or two times and then paid it off and thought he was doing something. It was like, no, you have to continuously utilize that so that each month you're getting a positive hit on your credit report, so that your credit score will go higher.
And what's the minimum length of time that they need to keep the credit cards and the revolving credit?
Well, we'd like to say until you get your keys. I mean, and until you get the keys to your house, then, if we put you on a plan that allows you to go ahead and improve your credit score, then we're going to be on that program, not depositing cash into your account, making sure that we're keeping track, making sure we stay employed, make sure we are still living where we say we're living, doing all of those things, not going out and buying the furniture prior to buying the house.
No, do not get the furniture. Do not buy the car. Wait till after you sign the papers.
Right, exactly. So that's going to be the key, is just making sure that those things happen in that time frame.
And Republic Bank actually has a credit building program, correct?
That is correct. We do offer both of those two services, the credit builder program as well as the secured credit card.
All right.
Okay.
What's next?
Okay.
On your list.
The next step... the next step is your documentation. One of the things that will slow down the process is for you not to be prepared. And we had talked off the radio here about having a folder. You want to create a folder of information that you can readily access to give to a financial institution. These things need to be your tax returns, your federal tax returns.
How many years?
For the last 2 years, okay? So as we stand here at the end of 2019, we need the 17 and 18s. Now, when you file your 2019 tax returns, you can get rid of the 17s, and then we need your 18s and your 19s. But we want to have at least 2 years of federal tax returns. We also want to have the corresponding W-2s or 1099s if you're self-employed. So those are things that are going to be in your package. What I tell people is just to put your whole package from when you went to go get your taxes done, take your whole package and go ahead and put that in. Now, if you are one of those type of people that do your taxes by yourself,